I welcome you all to the today's presentation. This is a part of ongoing series on geriatric health that we are conducting here for last 14 months. And
good evening, everyone. I'm Pallav. I don't know how many of you were present in the last month's program that we had. I see some familiar faces, some new ones, which is optimistic. We had basically had a session on brain gym, as it were, basically trying to work out different ways and means to keep ourselves fit, not just emotionally, but not just physically, as well as emotionally and cognitively. So we wanted to intervene that particular session with something which is slightly away, but nonetheless linked with that issue in some ways. So we thought that maybe a certain topic which would be relevant for everyone, not just for specific populations, everyone. As we age, how do we deal with loneliness? We thought we'll try and address some of that. I work with Vimhans as a consultant clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist. I end up seeing a lot of elderly because a lot of referrals come to me for evaluation of mild cognitive impairments, dementia spectrum. Well, some of them are eventually diagnosed to have Alzheimer's or other kinds of dementia, but there are also a lot of patients who end up coming to us who do not really suffer from dementia, but they are basically going through a phase of loneliness, a phase of adjustment with the new situation that life has thrown at them, and maybe finding it difficult to adjust very well. So they also present with a slightly similar kind of symptoms: forgetfulness, irritability, agitation, staying aloof, withdrawn, and things like that. And then people, would like to understand if this is heading towards a dementia and would like to get assessed. So in that context, we end up doing some evaluations, we end up speaking with them. And I'm going to share some of my experiences of handling such people, what I've learned from them, and maybe that information would be useful for all of you here in some way or the other, so that in case you too feel this way at any point of time, or any of your loved ones or family members or people around you, you were to see them going through a phase like this, maybe you could do something about it as well. So we'll basically look at that per se. Okay, so before we move into the presentation, how many of you have felt this sense of lonely, sense of being alone, isolated, or negative because you're all of you? Okay, some of you at some point of time or the other. Okay, so it's a fairly common phenomenon. It's not something which is unique, and it does not necessarily have to mean a catastrophe. So it's something that all of us, if you look back, maybe you would have felt something. If I were to look back, I would probably also raise my hand and vouch for that. Okay, so it's not something to be necessarily scared of. It's a process. We'll see how and why, what all we can do about it. So before we start off, narrating or analyzing or listing out things that are possible, we need to understand the difference between loneliness and solitude. You see, solitude is basically a state of being where a person is comfortable being alone. There's no difficulty as such. I think every one of us would like some solitude on a daily basis or on a regular basis, where you are maybe thinking about the past or just introspecting about your day, planning for the future and things like that. And that's good. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily that if a person is preferring solitude, he needs to be rushed to a hospital to meet a psychologist. So that's fairly all right. But then loneliness is when you are alone and you're not comfortable with that kind of being alone, and you're seeking company, but you're not getting the kind of companionship that you would like to happen. There could be many reasons for that, and as we age, the reasons somehow seem to escalate, why we eventually end up becoming more and more lonely, predominantly because we end up, maybe there are physical difficulties for which we are not able to go out as often as we would like to. As we age, we see more people, going away. We see family members getting busier in their day-to-day activities, so there's hardly any time for the elderly, grandchildren.